An antisocial boy joins a school club with an antisocial girl, and a romantic comedy ensues. I know it sounds generic, but trust me, this one is actually really good. What should I even call this show? Yahari Ore no Seishun Rabukome wa Machigatteiru doesn't exactly roll off your tongue. The English translation isn't any better with "My youth romantic comedy is wrong as I expected." It was released in the US as My Teen Romantic Comedy SNAFU, which I suppose is a little more palatable. Fun fact, though many of us think of SNAFU as simply meaning screw up, it's actually a World War II era acronym for Situation Normal, All Fucked Up. Anyway, the common abbreviation among Japanese fandom is Oregairu, so let's go with that. How do you take a seemingly generic premise and make it worth watching? In the case of Oregairu, the approach is clever writing. The characters' dialogue, and their inner monologues as well, are really well crafted. If only high school English classes hadn't made me hate reading, I could really see myself getting into the light novels. That said, I didn't have access to Japanese subtitles this time around, forcing me to watch the show with English subtitles, which actually worked out great because there was a lot of difficult Japanese. Great writing and difficult language don't necessarily have to go together, but admittedly there is a significant overlap between the two. One of the really impressive things about the writing is that it did sarcasm reasonably well, especially by Japanese standards, though it would be unfair not to mention that sarcasm even sucks in the US these days. Watch any superhero movie made in the last decade and you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. In Japan, people don't have a good grasp of sarcasm in the first place. When anime experiments with sarcasm, you usually end up getting a Tsukomi-style character, someone who reacts to the foolishness he sees right in front of him. But with Oregairu, the sarcasm really comes from within. It's not purely reactive, and that's a thing of beauty. The series starts out with the main character writing essays on how society sucks, kind of like what I used to write on my old Zonga blog back in high school. This character really is a lot like who I was back around his age. Unlike many antisocial characters in anime, the main character here actually likes himself. He has a funny personality, he thinks he's smart and reasonably good looking, he's just had too many bad social experiences, and because of that, he doesn't want to deal with people if he doesn't absolutely have to. As a consequence, he's not open to the possibility that some people around him might actually be good people worth getting to know. I must admit, I'm completely guilty of this. Despite my general praise for the writing, I will criticize it for what I call storybook feelings. I'm still working on this theory, maybe it already exists under a different name somewhere, but it's something I most often see in Western media. It's when characters in a story are given overly dramatic feelings that people in the real world simply don't have unless they're deliberately imitating what they see on TV because they're drama queens. I don't want to spoil anything from this show, so let me give you an example from BoJack Horseman, where this came up a lot. In one of the early episodes, BoJack Horseman goes up to one of the other characters and says, "I need you to tell me that I'm a good person." Who thinks like that? It's just lazy writing. If you want your characters to be dramatic, make it something real. You don't need lines that are not only out of character, but flat out unrealistic for anyone. Now, this is far from the biggest problem in the universe, but it is a pet peeve for me. Oregairu has some lines like this, and if you're really carried away by the drama, you might consider it good writing, but for someone like me, it's just kinda lame. Oregairu has 3 seasons. As ratings tend to go, later seasons often get higher ratings because the people who didn't like the earlier seasons don't stick around to review the later ones. That seems to be the trend for Oregairu, for which I'd say that all 3 seasons are about equally good. If anything, I'd say season 1 was my overall favorite, for a few reasons. First of all, it had the greatest variety of episodes, whereas seasons 2 and 3 had longer arcs that were more similar in nature. The main character was the most misanthropic in season 1, and sure, I could watch him become a better person in the later seasons, but it's so much fun to watch him reinforcing my own misanthropy. The main girl is a tsundere type, and I think it's the first time I have ever liked the tsun side of a tsundere more than her dere side. It feels like her character grew weaker in later seasons, or maybe we just realized that she wasn't as strong as she seemed to be in the first place, and I guess that's the point, she's also a human being, but still, I liked her more in the first season. I took the secondary lead girl most seriously as a romantic rival in the first season. After that, I never really expected her to pull ahead, and that's not to say that she does or doesn't, I'm just saying that's what my expectation was. There was a male side character who at first seemed like a douchebag jock, but there was a lot more to him than met the eye, and that was one of the more interesting developments in season 1. Finally, my favorite song from the series was Hello Alone, which was the ending song from the first season. Long story short, don't look at the reviews for all 3 seasons and think this show will take time to get good. It's actually really strong from the start. Getting back to the question I posed earlier, how do you take a seemingly generic premise and make it worth watching? For some, the answer is to make the animation extra pretty. Oregairu switched studios from Brainspace to Feel after season 1. I know nothing about the general reputation of these studios, but the opening scene of season 2 was all fluid and shiny. I'll admit it got me hyped up, but after about 2 episodes, that became the new normal, and you never even noticed anymore, aside from someone's hair occasionally looking a little different. That's why I always say that studios don't matter. The strength of the source material makes the difference from one studio to the next completely negligible. My other problem with seasons 2 and 3 was the student council girl, who I didn't see adding all that much value to the story. Now, I can dislike a character while still valuing the role she's given, but her role was just so much larger than necessary. I think she got the 3rd most screen time of any girl, despite being far from the 3rd best female character. Hiratsuka-sensei. On a final note, I gotta say I liked the voice acting. One of the girls is voiced by Toyama Nao, who voices Luria from Grand Blue Fantasy. Once I realized it, I couldn't unhear it, and yet I still liked it. The female lead is voiced by Hayama Saori, and I've liked her in everything I've seen her in. For example, she did Jabami Yumeko in Kakegurui. I'd also like to mention that this show used a lot of real locations from Chiba, and as someone who used to live in Chiba, that was kind of fan service for me, although I wouldn't expect that to mean anything to most viewers. Anyway, Oregairu is a great show overall. Double plus for all 3 seasons. It's a strong recommendation. Or perhaps you may want to check out the light novels. Someday, maybe I will.